Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Cruise Altitude, our light-hearted look at the world of aviation from the other side of the cockpit door. I'm Si.
And I'm John.
Coming up this episode, we go supersonic, discuss drones, and what are all those lights for?
And don't worry, it's got nothing to do with travel traffic lights. So, Si, it's been a couple of weeks since our last episode, so what have you been up to?
It has, John, yeah. Well, I've been quite busy, actually. I think we both had a little bit of time off, haven't we? A bit of time to...
yeah, certainly did.
I was going to say rest and recuperate, but we're not exactly busy people. But I've just got back into doing a bit of sim study, because I've got that coming up in just over a week's time. So
always fun.
Yeah, and do you know what? When you've not been up in the air as much as you'd have liked, it kind of requires a bit more attention than maybe is normal. So probably started a bit earlier and digging a bit deeper.
That's never a bad thing, though, is it?
No. What about you?
Well, not a lot really. The Euros have been on, haven't they? The football Euros.
They have, yeah.
European Championships. I have, yeah. It's been quite good, hasn't it?
I used to fill my day though, because you've got 3 games like back to back to back, and now it's 2 games on at the same time. I mean, that's just like.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they've not thought that through, have they?
No,
you kind of got to flick between the 2 channels.
Yeah, when you've got days to fill, you know, they should be looking out for people in our situation.
They need to think about travel industry workers who are stuck at home because there's very little flying.
Exactly. But yeah, any team taking your fancy that you think's going to go all the way?
Well, I was quite interested in Turkey as a bit of a dark horse, and I've been completely proven wrong because they've had, I think, the 4th worst European Championship performance of any team ever. So yeah, Turkey are out.
Yeah,
I'm a bit loath to big any other team up, to be honest. Maybe I'll go for Scotland.
I think everyone's getting behind Denmark, aren't they?
Given the whole Christian Eriksen thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They got Wales something in the next round. So
yeah,
see how that one goes.
Yeah, maybe Denmark are going to go on a little run. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. Yeah.
But yeah, actually, John, it's funny you mentioned Portugal, because it's fair to say our last episode didn't date very well, because only hours after it was released, there was some announcements in the UK which kind of put pay to any plans to go into Portugal for a while, which is I think where you said you'd like to go. And, I think I said I wanted to go to the States. That's still not looking overly likely from the UK at least.
No.
So yeah, but it has been a bit of a traumatic few weeks for the airline industry in the UK. But in other areas of the world, things continue to boom, don't they?
They certainly do, yeah.
Yeah, and here at Cruise Altitude, we always try to be as positive as possible and to bring you the most factual information we can. So we'll leave it to others to comment on government policy and the rights and wrongs of the current system we've got here in the UK. But are we looking at another lost summer season for the European travel industry, John? Well, not necessarily. So passenger numbers continue to increase in the United States. You remember we looked at TSA checkpoint data in our last episode?
We did,
yeah. Since then, numbers passed the 2 million mark per day.
That's a lot. That's healthy, isn't it?
It is, yeah, for the first time since the start of the pandemic. And Europe has opened up with the use of vaccine passports, which is something else we've sort of touched on previously. That seems to be quite a sensible and pragmatic kind of testing policy they've got there, and alongside those passports, haven't they?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I saw. I'm sure you saw it as well, Si. Stories of one of the German airlines sending jumbo jets down to Mallorca and all sorts. So there's definitely demand, isn't there? And where people are allowed to travel in most European countries now, people are travelling, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, with that kind of deployment of wide body aircraft onto short haul European routes, it kind of amplifies just how demand is recovering, but also our airlines are being incredibly flexible and being, responsive and dynamic in response to kind of booking trends that they're seeing.
Yeah, we've spoken before, haven't we, about how booking trends have changed to generally become shorter in terms of sort of the time between booking and actually departing.
Yeah.
But airlines this year, we've seen them, they've now been able to take advantage of changes in demand by becoming more flexible and sort of deploying capacity to certain areas or opening up to new markets at short notice. So I think that's something, Si, that pre-pandemic we probably wouldn't really have seen, isn't it?
No, I totally agree. Yeah.
And particularly from the big legacy carriers, even they've found sort of new ways to be increasingly nimble.
Absolutely, yes. So there's definitely going to be some sort of positive trends that come out of this that we can, hopefully make the industry far more dynamic in the future. And it's all looking very positive now in many areas of the globe, with some carriers reporting capacity levels in line with 2019, so pre-pandemic,
wow, yeah.
and also revenues to match.
Yeah, and it's impressive, isn't it? And that's certainly seeing that over in the United States at the moment, aren't we? I mean, I read an article just yesterday about an airline over there that's talking about being back in profit for June 2021. They're saying, well, only just over 12 months after entering probably the worst pandemic or worst financial crisis for airlines that we've had ever, and they're coming back into profit. So there's definitely some green roots again. We keep talking about green roots, don't we? But they are starting to get bigger. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's not to say that they're actually returning to profit, but they're at least operating profitably at the moment. Yeah. So let's hope this trend continues. Vaccinations and vaccine passports prove effective, and testing requirements can be sensibly and cost effectively managed to allow as many of us to get moving again as possible.
Yeah, and a little note, you mentioned vaccines there, Si, but airlines are totally behind this vaccine drive too. And in fact, I read another story. One airline in the US has recently announced it will offer extra pay to all crew who show proof of having a vaccine. So, what a great gesture and a great initiative it is. And hopefully more people will keep getting vaccinated, and we can open up globally. And the countries that have remained closed to travel can give them the confidence that actually it would be safe for their people to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. It just shows that there are additional benefits to getting vaccinated other than the obvious health benefits, even for those people who maybe don't feel vulnerable. Then if they know that double vaccine can enable them to travel, then there's a good reason to go and get the jab, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go and get it. I'm waiting on my second one. Won't be long.
No. So, should we go all supersonic, John?
Yeah.
So the supersonic travel is potentially returning. So we've not seen any commercial supersonic aircraft since the days of Concorde, but it has been announced that supersonic travel is coming back. The Boom supersonic aircraft, John, is what it's going to be called.
I saw that. I like that name, actually. Boom. Yeah. It says what it is, isn't it? Basil Brush would like it, wouldn't he? The second prototype, Boom Boom.
So one US airline has recently announced it's looking to purchase the Boom supersonic aircraft, which is the latest reincarnation of a supersonic passenger aircraft. So what do we think, John? Is this a genuine likelihood or more of a publicity stunt?
I don't know. I'd like to think it's real. The only thing I would say is, supersonic travel died off, didn't it, back in 2003, I think it was, Concorde last flew. And
that's
so, right, that's what we're almost 20 years on now, and no one's been able to do it or make it cost effective. The world's changed a little bit. There's a lot of people are more concerned now about, carbon emissions, all that sort of stuff. So will it happen? I don't know. It would have to be sustainably fueled, wouldn't it, I guess? So I don't know.
So, as you say, there hasn't been a commercial supersonic aircraft since Concorde, which last flew in 2003.
Yeah.
And actually, kind of the trend has gone away from speed and more into kind of size and efficiency. So we've got bigger aircraft, haven't we? And certainly more fuel efficient aircraft, but not necessarily faster.
Here's a question for you, Si, because I know you like a fact, and it's just dawned on me. So Concorde was the only other supersonic passenger airliner, but do you know which aeroplane holds the world record for cruising speed, basically, in flight?
Is it Trident?
It's not the Trident, but you're not that far from home.
That's normally a good guess.
It's another British creation. It's the Vickers VC-10. There you go.
Of course.
So look it up if you don't know what a VC-10 is. Brilliant aeroplane. But yeah, it held the. It's still, I think, to this day, and I've not fact checked this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, the fastest commercial airliner aside from Concorde. There you go.
Not a very green aircraft though, was it?
No, I don't think it was. No, 4 big engines at the back.
So the Boom aircraft is the designers say it's going to be the first aircraft planned to be net zero carbon from launch.
Wow, it's like the Tesla of the air.
Yeah, there's some positive spin here from an environmental perspective. The manufacturer states it will use a combination of materials, including carbon composites, which I'm pretty sure I've been using aircraft before, titanium and aluminium, heard of those as well. And it can reach supersonic speeds without the use of afterburners. So
I'm not quite sure how they're going to do that, but
well, presumably they need an engine that's not yet been designed.
Yeah, which is why it raises me. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does sort of pose the question, what kind of engine will it have? And I kind of wonder how far down the road they are with that project. So they probably need an engine that's not yet been designed and some fuel to go in it that doesn't yet exist.
Been designed either. Yeah.
But they're going to build the rest of it out of stuff we've already used. So
I think...
I don't know.
I'd like to think it could happen. I think, supersonic travel, it's still got that glamour, hasn't it? And why not? If you can get across the Atlantic in 3 hours or so, then...
So do you think there's still a market for supersonic travel?
Well, I guess it depends on how it's priced, doesn't it? I mean, what I saw the boom is going to be quite small, isn't it? So I think in terms of, passenger revenue, which we know is really important to airlines, obviously, the businesses, ticket prices are going to be high. I mean, Concorde was synonymous, wasn't it, with kind of glamorous...
Yeah. But I guess you can only live off the novelty of, here's a supersonic plane that flies really fast for so long, and then it has to make some sort of commercial sense.
Yeah.
Apparently, it would offer New York to London in 3.5 hours, and Frankfurt in 4 hours.
Yeah, that's
and
pretty
it
good,
could go
it?
Trans-Pacific from the west coast of the States to Tokyo in just 6 hours. So pretty quick, comparable with Concorde.
It is pretty quick, right? It sounds expensive.
It does sound expensive. And there's still some negatives, which are kind of, I guess, a legacy of Concorde's time. So it can't fly supersonic over land due to sonic boom.
Sonic boom, yeah.
And the restrictions,
I suppose.
Yeah, and the restrictions that still exist from when Concorde's around, because that couldn't do it either.
No.
So this sort of significantly limits its use, really. So it's only ever going to fly, it couldn't fly from the east coast to the west coast of America, for example, fast because it's too noisy.
And when Concorde came into service, there was all that sort of criticism over in the States at the time. There was kind of protests outside JFK and all sorts of things about the noise that Concorde was making. So they have to work on things like that, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that for them to say that it's going to use fully sustainable aviation fuel and be kind of net zero for carbon is pretty ambitious. And they've said it aims to be in service by 2029, which is optimistic, I reckon. Yeah,
I think so too. But let's stay positive, because I think it's a great idea, and it would be fantastic if it happened. And I guess you need dreamers, and someone's got to have a dream and come up with it and put pen to paper and actually design the thing. And you never know. But I don't know how far along they are with the project. But if they're talking about being in service by 2029, then you'd like to think they're
yeah.
That's not that long away.
I've never flown supersonic. I never got to go on Concorde. So if there's a chance to fly on the boom, then why not?
I'd have a go.
So John, it would be wrong to discuss the boom without being a little bit nostalgic and mentioning Concorde, wouldn't it?
It would.
What an aircraft!
Oh, amazing! Yeah, iconic.
Now, got a few little facts for you here about Concorde.
Go on.
I didn't realise this, but Concorde used to reach altitudes in the cruise of 60,000 feet.
Yeah, he used to get so far above everything else, wasn't it? And the atmosphere was thinner.
That's a height of over 11 miles.
Wow, that's crazy, isn't it?
That is proper high. Like your average commercial long-haul aircraft would cruise at what? Getting off of 40,000 feet?
40,000 feet, yeah. So that's 20,000.
Yeah, so...
Some amazing pictures. If you Google on the internet, use any search engine on the internet, there's some amazing pictures of the curvature of the Earth that you could see from that height and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's sights that only astronauts would see really normal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fighter jet pilots. But yeah, amazing.
And just before it was retired, it was one of the only commercial aircraft as well to still have a flight engineer.
Yeah.
As part of the flight crew. In fact, it had 9 crew members on it normally, 2 pilots and a flight engineer. Yeah. And then six cabin crew. Do you know how many passengers it used to fly on average?
That's about 100, wasn't it? In that region, 120, something like that. Yeah.
About 100, yeah. Do you fancy a Concorde quiz?
Go on, let's have a go.
I know you like a quiz.
Right, I do like a quiz.
All right, we'll test your Concorde knowledge, and we'll go quick fire. All right, you ready for this?
Go on.
All right, question number 1.
Supersonic fire.
Supersonic quiz. On what date did Concorde 001 complete its maiden flight, and where?
Right, I'll answer the second bit first, because where was Toulouse in France?
Yes.
And what date? I'm getting late 60s. 68.
So that's a good guess. It was the 2nd of March 1969, as you rightly said, down in Toulouse in the south of France. Very good.
Close.
Question 2. I'll give you some options for this one, John. How wide is the plane's wingspan? Delta wing, right?
Yeah.
So the wing is it A, 23 metres, B, 25 metres, or C, 30 metres?
Well, I have absolutely no idea, but I know it wasn't that big, so I'm going to go down the middle and say 25 metres.
25 metres. Good guess, John. 25.5 metres, actually, for those people out there who like decimal places. Or for those people who like feet and inches, 83 foot and 8 inches.
God,
That's pretty big, isn't it? 25 metres. That's
but not,
serious.
Yeah, but I suppose, yeah.
Question 3, how many Concords were there in service for BA until October 2003?
So I think it was...
that's when the service finished, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was 14 in total, wasn't there? So I think it was 7 with Air France and 7 with BA.
5, apparently.
Oh, okay. Maybe they retired. I don't know. Did they retire a couple early? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right.
7,
I think it was
7 for
they
each.
did have 7,
point,
didn't they? But I think
only 2 airlines it flew with, Air France and BA. Yeah.
Absolutely. Question 4: what is Concorde's fastest flight time from New York to London? You want some options for this one?
Go on.
All right. So on the 7th of February 1996, this happened.
Yeah.
And it made the crossing in, was it 2 hours 52 minutes, 2 hours 59 minutes, or 3 hours 15 minutes? Keep in mind that boom thing we were talking about before.
Yeah.
They were talking about doing this in just over 3 hours, wasn't it? Almost 3.5 hours, I reckon. So
3.5 hours, wasn't it? So I'm going to say, well, Concorde was... So, it was about 3 hours, wasn't it? So you said 2 hours 59, so I'll go with that one.
2 hours 52 minutes
7
and
minutes
59
out.
seconds, to be precise.
6 minutes out, and I'll give myself that one.
Yeah, not too bad. Question 5. You'll know this, John, for sure. So Concorde's very distinctive because it had a nose that moved, didn't it?
It did.
Why did it move?
So that was to allow the pilots to see the runway on takeoff and landing, because obviously it's so pointy, and so they would drop the nose, give themselves a better view of the landing, the runway for landing and takeoff. Yeah, and streamline it once you got in the cruise.
Pretty cool bit of engineering.
Yeah,
that, to be
very
honest.
cool. Yeah.
Right, next question. When did Concorde begin service as a commercial aircraft?
Oh, so first flight we said was 69, didn't we? March 69.
That was a test flight, yeah.
Yeah, so I've 5-6 years after. There was a few delays actually with Concorde, because that was one of the problems with the whole programme. So 77.
76.
A year out again.
Yeah, so you're right. It did take a few years for it to actually go from kind of test to commercial, which kind of makes the Boom's 2029 date look
it's ambitious,
optimistic.
isn't it? Yeah, very ambitious.
It was BA who flew that flight. Do you know where they went?
Yeah, it's the Middle East, wasn't it? London, somewhere in the Middle East. I don't know where, but
Bahrain.
Bahrain, there you go. Right, yeah.
So I don't know if they even went supersonic on that
it's
flight.
over land,
Possibly
isn't
not.
it? Yeah, probably not. Actually.
Yeah. All right, a couple more questions for you.
Go on.
Here, I'll give you some options again for this one. What was the plane's cruising speed? We'll do it in miles per hour because it's European after all.
And that's what you've got the stats on, I guess.
I've got to answer it both. Was it 1,156 miles per hour, 1,336 miles per hour, or 1,506 miles per hour?
I'm going to go down the middle. What was the middle one?
1,336.
Yeah, I'll go for that one.
Correct. And
Mach
just
2.
to prove I worked it out, that's 2,150 kilometres per hour.
There you
Otherwise
go.
known as Mach 2. Yeah, exactly.
Twice the speed of sound. Amazing.
Twice the speed of sound.
Pretty impressive.
Quick. What was an average kind of sort of long haul aircraft cruise at?
Sort of
something?
0.85 is 85% of the speed of sound. So yeah, to go twice the speed of sound, that's over twice as fast as.
So what, 700-800 miles an hour? Something
That's
like
amazing,
that?
isn't it? Yeah. Pretty impressive.
Last question then, John.
Go
What innovation did Concorde introduce after the very sad crash in Paris? Do you remember what they did to try and...
So they put Kevlar linings, didn't they, on the fuel tanks? Because I think it was caused by some debris off the runway hitting the bursting a tyre, I think, and that hit the underside of the wing, so it lights the fuel in the fuel tank. So they lined them, didn't they, with Kevlar, which is sort of bulletproof basically, to prevent them getting pierced. Yeah,
that's right.
But sadly, never really came back after that, did it? Because
no, it didn't, did it? It was quite a sad end for what was a very iconic aircraft, but
changing times. But maybe we're getting back to it. Maybe, back in 2003, things weren't great for supersonic travel. We just had a financial crash in 2001, 2. So, there wasn't appetite. But maybe as we come out of the pandemic, maybe, people want a bit of something different. And fingers crossed, we get the boom. There we go.
Absolutely. So the boom's got quite something to live up to anyway, if it's going to come to the air.
Certainly has.
So from Supersonic to Landed In, John, our regular look at the destination's cruise altitude is visited via you, our listeners. And we're very lucky, John. We've got loads of loyal listeners, but also we often land in a brand new country. So where have we landed in this time?
Drum roll, please. This week's site, we've landed in Japan.
Japan. Wow.
Our first ever Japanese listeners.
I would love to go to Japan. I've never been. Have you?
I've not been to Japan. I would like to go to Japan. I love Japanese food, I have to say.
Yeah, great food. Lovely
Sushi,
people.
Teppanyaki, yeah.
Yeah, lots of blossom.
Yeah. Japanese.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, here are some facts about Japan for you, Si, then. Do you know what the two biggest airports in Japan are?
I guess they must be around the Tokyo area.
Yeah, they are. They're around Tokyo.
Narita, that's pretty famous.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So Narita, that is actually the biggest airport. It's got more international flight choices than any other airport in Japan.
It's not that near Tokyo, though, is it?
It's not, so that might give you a clue. So
there's one that's closer, more in the city. Haneda, is that it?
Haneda, that is correct, yeah. So Haneda is smaller than Narita, with less international flight choices, but it is close to central Tokyo. And actually, surprisingly so, I didn't know this, but Haneda is the biggest by passenger traffic. So not the biggest airport overall, and doesn't have the most flights.
Big domestic
have more
market,
passengers,
I guess, hasn't it?
Yeah, huge domestic market in Japan.
I've got a very good knowledge of Japanese airports for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, nor do I. But Haneda is regularly in the top 5 airports in the world for passenger traffic.
There we go.
There you go. Let's test your knowledge on Japanese airport codes then, see if you're quite as good on those. So remember, IATA code then, remember these are the 3-letter ones.
Okay, all right. So these are quite intuitive, aren't they? So let's see, how do I spell Haneda? So I'll keep the H. So
yeah, good idea, yeah.
Get rid of the A. Keep the N. HND?
HND, very good.
Oh,
it's like a countdown, isn't it? Just keep the consonants, don't want any vowels.
Consonant, please, Carol.
Yeah. Right, so the 4-letter code then, that's the ICAO one. Any ideas?
Oh, crikey.
See how you do on that one. It's a bit more tricky. Isn't it?
Yeah, so the first letter is like the regional bit, isn't it? So that's sort of where it is in the world. So it's kind of, I sort of remember like India and Afghanistan, those areas. But it's a total guess. I don't really know. P?
No, it's close. It's R. R starts with R.
Okay, so R. So then the country is next in it. So that must be J.
Yeah, J for Japan. That makes sense.
And then T for Tokyo.
T for Tokyo. Good idea. Yeah.
And then I don't know what the last one is. Might be one of those fillers. Maybe it's like a X. RJTX. I'm going for.
No, you're close. RJTT.
That's not a bad guess.
So 3 out of 4.
There you
Yeah,
go.
2
I'll
out
take
of
that.
4.
That's normally a pass, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of like a Meatloaf song, but not quite, isn't it? Yeah. So RJTT, right, nearest countries to Japan then, Si.
What's in the middle of the sea?
Give me
John?
three nearest countries to Japan.
I guess they're all to the west, aren't they? Because
Yeah,
there's not
they
a lot
are,
to the east for a long way, because they're not very close. So Korea's pretty close, isn't it? I think
Korea, yeah,
Must be one
Korea's
of them.
certainly close, yeah.
China, obviously.
China, obviously.
Then there's probably something
more?
to the bit more northern.
I'll put out your misery, Russia. So
Russia
yeah, Korea,
didn't
China,
do very
and
well
Russia.
in the Euros either, did they? Actually,
No, they didn't do too well in the Euros, but never mind. Maybe next
No.
time. And
how
well-
can Russia border Japan and be in the Euros? That just shows how big that country is.
doesn't it? Huge country. Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
Maybe we'll get a listener from Russia soon, John.
You can,
There's enough
well,
people there.
yeah. Sometimes, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? And
Maybe we'll land in Russia.
Write in, tell us all about it.
Anyway.
All right, final one then. Main airline of Japan.
Well, there's two that spring to mind. You see them flying a lot internationally. So Japan Airlines, JAL, would be
Yeah.
one that I'd guess. But then All Nippon Airlines is pretty big as
Yeah,
well. Isn't it?
ANA.
I don't know which one is the biggest, to be honest with
It's
you.
ANA actually, closer on apparently.
Is it?
But ANA are just the biggest airline in Japan. They've got some really cool liveries ANA as well. I think you see the
Yeah, they have actually.
the A380s
Yeah.
that they fly over to Hawaii, which I think it's Hawaii or something like that, which is painted like a beluga whale.
Is it?
It is. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So, right, more fun facts for you because I'm full of those. Japan is actually I get this right, an archipelago.
Yes.
So, because it's not just one island, it actually is 6,800 islands in the Japanese archipelago, which is
Crikey, really?
mind blowing, isn't it? It's probably why there's so many
mental.
domestic flights, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose
And
so, yeah.
there you go. Here's a good one I found about. So we know the Japanese are very innovative, got great technology and
Yeah, always first to the market with tech and gadgets and that kind of stuff, aren't they? Yeah, that's true, yeah.
But it's also innovation is something that filters through to Japanese farmers because you know what Japanese farmers
right?
designed?
Something
You won't.
neat and tidy.
Yeah, well, yeah, close. I can say you won't get this one. Square watermelons.
Really?
There you go. Grown by Japanese farmers because they're easier to stack and store. So what an organised bunch of people the Japanese
I'm
are.
going to Google this now. Square watermelons.
Square watermelons. Yeah, I don't know much about them. Don't think I've ever had one or seen one. But
Okay, that's interesting.
I was quite impressed by
do
that.
You know, that's quite cool, actually. Quite cool. I can see. Yeah, definitely be easier to stack. I wonder if they got square seeds.
I don't know. If you are a Japanese listener, and you happen to be a farmer, maybe you could write
I don't know,
in.
like, you know when you slice
Tell
it
us.
up, is it as practical to slice and eat as like a, you don't have that nice round piece you got? I don't know.
Don't know. Pros and cons
We'll
of
see.
square watermelons.
Yeah.
Tweet
Brilliant.
us and let
So
us know.
let's go visit Japan, and
I'd
while
love to
we're
go to
there,
Japan.
we'll sit and look at the blossom whilst using a new gadget and eating some square watermelon.
And sushi.
Sorted.
I love sushi.
See you there.
So it's time for our regular mailbag segment where we answer the questions that you want us to answer. And you can, of course, send questions in to us via our email, cruisealtitude@outlook.com, via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, just by DM or by posting on our page. Or you can visit our website for all the links, that's cruisealtitude.com. But it's always great to hear from you. And we've got a load more questions again this week, Si. So we've picked a few for us to tackle.
Okay.
And the first one this week comes from Marilyn, I hope I've pronounced that right, in Paris.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Marilyn says, I was on a plane last week and I noticed that at one wingtip there is a red light and on the other a green light. It seems all aircraft have the same colours. Do they mean something?
Well, Marilyn, thanks very much for your question. And good question, good observation. Maybe it's a night flight. It's not always that easy to see, are they? But
No, they're not.
Yeah, I think
No.
what she's referring to, John, here are probably the navigation lights.
Yeah, I would say certainly not travel traffic lights.
Less said about
I've heard
those.
enough about travel traffic lights.
Less said about
so-
those, the better.
I don't know if they have them in France actually, so
No.
just here in the UK, I think.
Anyway, moving on. Yeah, I think she's referring to navigation lights. So all aircraft have them, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
I think actually they're probably only required at night, but they tend to
legally they're only required at night.
Yeah,
we do tend to use them all the time, don't we?
Yeah, well, it's just in case we forget to turn them on when it gets dark. But
yeah, I guess so.
That's how I do it. Yeah, but anyway, so there's there's three actually. So you've got a white one at the back of the plane, right on the back of the tail, and then you've got a red one and a green one, as Marilyn correctly observed. So the red one is on the left wingtip, and the green one is on the right wingtip.
Good
now,
knowledge.
do you know I remember that, John? This goes all the way back to flight school. So I remember that port is red, as in
like port wine,
as in fortified wine.
Yeah.
And in my case, there's no port left, so that must be on the left-hand side. So the red is on the left.
Very good.
Yeah, there you go.
Makes it simple, doesn't it?
The other one's green, right? Starboard.
Yeah.
Anyway, the idea is that at night you can distinguish another aircraft and which direction it's travelling in. So depending on which light appears where, you can tell if the aircraft is travelling towards you or away from you. That's basically what they're for.
Oh, cool. So it's quite simple, really.
We do have some other lights, which you might sort of see at the same time. So we have like what we call a strobe light, which is like a sort of high-intensity flashing white light. So these are also found on the wingtips, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And we have those on all the time, don't we, for takeoff to landing, basically.
Exactly, yeah. So from the moment we enter the runway to the moment we leave it, they're always on. So if you're on a flight at night, you'll probably see a steady red or green light at the wingtip, which are the ones that Marilyn was on about. And then next to that will be a flashing white light, which would be a strobe light. And then, just to confuse the matter a bit further, we also have a beacon light, don't we?
We do, yeah.
This is normally a red light as well. So normally we have one of these on the top of the fuselage and another one on the belly of the fuselage. So these are flashing red lights, aren't they? And
it's like a slow flash, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And they basically just they're always on and flashing as kind of a warning that the aircraft is either moving or about to move. So just before we push back from the gate, we'll turn that on to warn all the ground personnel who are down there that we're about to move, and other aircraft, of course. And then once we get on the gate and we get on the gate and we set the parking brake, we'll turn it off.
That's it.
So there we go.
Good question. I like that one.
Yeah. So
Nice.
Our second question this episode, John, comes from Bram in Belgium. Now, Bram, he tells us, works in the control tower at Brussels Airport.
Oh, wow. Hello, Bram. Probably spoken over the years. In some...
Yeah, so I no doubt we have. Anyway, Bram writes, he says, first of all, congratulations with your podcast about aviation. Thanks, Bram. He said, I only discovered them recently, but I'm catching up with the podcast rapidly. And of course, if you do want to catch up with our podcast, we've now got Cruise Altitude Final Call, which is available, haven't we, John?
We have indeed. That's our YouTube channel. So there's a couple of episodes on there already, but it's all episodes that are no longer available for your podcast providers. You can go back and look in the archives, Cruise Altitude Final Call, and they're all available on YouTube. So do check that out if you get a chance, Bram, and anybody else who's interested.
Yeah, so Bram's been working his way through those. He says, I do have a question. He says, how worried are pilots about drones in controlled airspace? Which is a good question, isn't it, John? And
it is a good question.
More and more of a kind of an issue.
It certainly is. And you see, obviously, drones are far more prevalent now than they were probably 5 or 10 years ago. And we have been, in the last few years, some quite notable incidents where flying drones have closed airports. Do you remember the incident in London Gatwick, for example? Which
absolutely,
2 years ago now, something like that.
Shut the airport for a few days, didn't it?
It did, yeah, it did. So it is an issue. And I think it's probably because there's so many drones around now, because it's so easy to get hold of. I mean, I can only talk really about Europe, because I know that here in Europe they have changed a lot of the rules. So whereas you used to be able to just go and buy a drone, anybody could fly one. They've started to really regulate it now. So from the 31st December last year, 2020, the rules are basically the same now in the UK as they are in all European member states. And it's quite complicated. You can find all these online, and there's lots of different rules. But basically, it depends on the size of the drone that you're flying, and it depends on what you're using it for. and there's set rules to try and keep aeroplanes safe. So key one being I can think of is that you can't fly a drone higher than 400 feet above the surface.
Right. Okay.
And that's obviously to avoid coming into contact with commercial or any aeroplanes basically, because some of these drones can be quite big, can't they? Si? That's
they can. Yeah.
And there's also restricted areas that they've built around all airports. So I think it's 5 kilometres circle basically around any airport is a restricted area for drones, and then an extra kilometre on top of that at the ends of every runway on the airport. So that's obviously to keep them, because that's where airplanes are likely to be flying a little bit lower. There's lots of other things, but it gets really, really complicated. But you do see more and more of them. Have you personally had any issues with drones, Si? I know I've seen them flying in the past.
I've only ever seen one from the flight deck, which is slightly concerning. That was on a takeoff that I did. And it did pass pretty close to the aircraft, or certainly appeared that way, but they're very, very small, and kind of the relative movement of an aircraft going at a couple hundred miles an hour compared to a drone that's probably just hovering it goes past pretty quick. So it was something that I'd rather not see again. However, going back to Bram's question, how concerned am I about it? Well, as you just said, there's loads of protections that have been sort of built in, and loads of rules and regulations about where and how you can sort of legally fly them. So really, they shouldn't be in our airspace, as it were.
No.
And on that particular event, we reported it to air traffic control at the time, so someone like Bram, and then there's a reporting system that we need to file where we had to write things like where we were, how high we were, how fast we were going. Actually, I had to draw a picture of the drone and send that off as well.
Which is difficult, isn't it? Because
you're
moving so quick, it's hard to...
I just drew a big black dot.
It was what it looked like, isn't it?
It probably wasn't the most helpful. But that all gets reported back to the police, doesn't it? I think
it does.
And then they will go and try and investigate and try to find the operative and make sure that they are appropriately sort of dealt with. But in terms of like how dangerous it would be to an aircraft, the drone's going to come off an awful lot worse, isn't it?
It is. I mean, obviously, airplanes flying. You mentioned there, drones are probably going to be hovering because they usually use photography, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Airplanes are flying at quite a speed. So, the size of an airplane relative to the size of a drone, it's probably the drone that's going to come off worse off. But they are an issue, and that's why the regulatory boards have moved, shall we say, to put some legislation in to prevent that. And obviously, these no-fly zones around airports. You also need to have a license now to fly a drone as well. So
I mean, you do.
It used to be that anybody could go and do it, but and you can get a fine if you fly one without, or worse, you can even be sent to prison for it. So you have to pass a theory test. You have to have a flyer ID. Really? It has to all be registered. There's loads of things they've done to sort of reduce the risk basically from drones. To aeroplanes.
Hopefully we won't kind of conflict with them, but if we do a little bit like aircraft are tested against bird strikes, a drone strike would probably be fairly similar, I'd say, in terms of size and weight, and therefore damage to the aircraft is probably going to be superficial. It's certainly not going to cause any major issues.
And I think like everything with regards to flying, safety is the number one concern, isn't it? It's the number one. So always. So all the legislation that's been brought in and all the controls that we have over that mean that, there are more and more drones, but actually are they a safety risk to an aeroplane in controlled airspace? Well, I'd say probably not, but something we have to be mindful of.
Absolutely. But thanks, Bram. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you on our next trips to Brussels.
Yeah, when it all opens up.
Whenever that may be.
Exactly.
Unless I'm on a train.
Great question, Bram. Right, time for one more, Si.
Okay.
We've got one here. This comes from Lakshman. Again, I hope my pronunciation is all right. Lakshman, even, who is in Mumbai over in India. So Lakshman says, "Hi guys, I love the podcast. Keep up the good work. Thanks. My question is, when I book a flight, why does the price change if I don't book a return? For example, a return ticket might be $100 for the outbound trip, but the same outbound flight one way is $160. Why is this?" Okay, that's a good question, actually.
Yeah, it is a good question from Lakshman. Thanks for the question. So this is kind of all to do with algorithms in the booking process, I guess, John. So, yeah, if you wanted to buy a ticket, a return flight quite often is not significantly more expensive than a one-way ticket. And in Lakshman's example, actually breaking down the price of the flight there, the outbound flight is $100 if he books a return trip, but if he doesn't, then the outbound price goes up to $160. So this really is to do with airlines trying to fill seats. So an airline would much rather sell you a return flight than just a one-way flight. And that's because it's just not as easy to find a single passenger who wants to fly one way. So if you decide you just want to fly one way, trying to find somebody who wants to fill your seat for the return is potentially difficult, and they may not find somebody to fill that seat. So essentially what they're doing here is they're kind of charging you a premium to help cover potentially their lost revenue if they can't fill that seat. I mean, if they can fill that seat, great, they're going to make more profit, but they're kind of hedging their bets, really, aren't they?
I suppose it's a little bit like solo occupancy in hotels. I mean, hotels used to charge more for one person to stay than they did for two.
Right,
things like that. So it's all
and
the same lines, isn't it?
Often, if you hire a car, and let's say you pick it up one place, but you don't return it to the same.
That's even better.
And you drop it off at another destination, then the car's kind of in the wrong place. And in this case, like the aircraft seat is sort of in the wrong place. They need someone to bring the seat back. The seat's going to fly back empty otherwise. So that's kind of the best analogy I can give you, Lakshman. But it's often cheaper and better to book a one-way trip. To book a return trip.
Yeah. Cool. Hope that answers it, Lakshman. But it is all we've got time for, Si. It goes so quick, doesn't it?
It does.
So if you like the episode, please do share it around. Get in touch with us and let us know. We always love to hear from you. And also, I say this every single episode, but please, if you can, do leave us a review or rating. You can, of course, get in touch with us via various social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can email us at cruisealtitude@outlook.com, or you can log on to our website. That's cruisealtitude.com. And, of course, as you mentioned before, Si, don't forget to check out our brand new YouTube page, Cruise Altitude Final Call, where you can listen to some of our older episodes whenever you like. We'll be back next time with all our usual features and segments, plus we answer your questions again from the mailbag.
Thanks very much for listening. For now, keep it down to earth with Cruise Altitude.
Thanks for listening to Cruise Altitude. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast provider, leave us a review and get in touch via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. Links can be found over on our website, cruisealtitude.com. A down-to-earth podcast from Cruise Altitude.